All right, season 1, episode 11, The Wire, first watch, rewatch.
Welcome back.
Pumped up. We're almost there.
This is the infamous meme episode. I finally made it, so I feel like this is a milestone. Like fireworks, balloons, all that. I made it to the meme, so I'm officially a fan now. I think now that I made it here.
Now I gave you the heads up, but I gave you the heads up when we started the episode that this was the episode. But as soon as the scene started, you called it. You're like, "This is the scene." You knew it right away. So that's
yeah.
fun.
It's very clear. Like you saw the windows, and you know what, man? When Stringer first had his first scene at the copy store a couple weeks ago, the first time I'm like, "Is this where the scene happens?" I didn't know, but I thought, like, "Is this the glass?" I thought it might be it. So
isn't that funny that something you've seen it so many times, but you recognize that the location it happens doesn't even exist until it actually exists. Like you see it so clearly because you know it so well.
Yeah, exactly.
So we start off with, again, the hunt, and we get our cold open. And this is just a literal continuation of the previous episode's final scene with Kima and Orlando being shot. And the sting gone wrong with, so far what we know is Savino was the only person involved. And this is seeing how the police operate, basically, on a large scale with something like a cop being shot. Everyone from the department is there. You've got DEA, Baltimore from different divisions, plus the detail. Everyone that was involved to help this go now has descended upon the scene, which makes the crime scene very unstable. And we see Major Rawls right away stepping up to Jay, to the sergeant, and saying, "What do you need?"
As we were watching this, I made a comment to you, like, it's impossible not to like Rawls in this episode, and especially in that scene, because he takes control of the scene as, you know, the murder op, the head, what is his position? Chief of?
Major
of homicide. And we see him take control of that situation, and throughout the episode, we see him take control of his officers. So,
and right away, you know, Jay tells him, "I just got too many people. We tell people to leave. People keep showing up." And so he shouts it out right away. "Nobody fucking move. If you have not been given a direct order from somebody on this case, you got to go."
In homicide specifically, too.
Homicide specifically. This is homicide's call. There's no outranking from the DEA.
Mm-hmm.
We are trying to run this case as by the book as possible. And he even says, try not to give these guys any reason to fuck up the case. And we even hear at some point we get to see that everyone is kind of has a specific role. When Rawls checks before he leaves the scene, a little bit later on, he checks to make sure that there's someone at the morgue with the body, someone at the hospital with Kima. There's somebody who's getting prints off of the car. There's people that are on the actual trail of the footprints. There's a lot of different pieces, and the organization of it is being stated outright to Rawls. Without him being there, that organization wouldn't have really been there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We get Kima. We get the reason why Kima wasn't able to get her gun when Bunk is actually going through the car, and they see that the gun had fallen to the back and come off these worn seats, and the signs, in addition, were turned around. And Orlando even made mention to that the hoppers turned the signs to fuck with the cops. But we see that Kima never even had a shot here, because where she was giving out her locations or giving out her 20s is not where she actually was.
Right, because they would spin the signs. And it's just tragic that, you know, we have a whole scene where we set up where the gun's going to be for Kima in the previous episode, and it just slid and moved out of where she was expecting it, and cost her probably her life, maybe.
And we get Herc showing up. He's been on training again. We found out last episode, but he shows up here in the middle of the night, just like, what the hell happened? And finally, we get Rawls turning the street sign back to the right location.
It was interesting to see Rawls kind of act not as a boss, but as a detective in that scene. You see him, you know, scoping out the area and using his detective skills.
We get the credits and our opening, and our quote for the episode, "Dope on the damn table," which is from Daniels, which is a requote from Burrell.
Burrell, yeah. Which may have been a quote from somebody above him, for all we know.
Yes. Most likely from that asshole commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
Daniels is now at the hospital giving his statement to homicide. I think that's Norris, Detective Norris, that's asking him the questions. And we basically, all we know is that Greggs is not in good condition, having a lot of procedures done and operations and precautions put on her that would signify someone that's not going to make it.
Yeah, she's in bad shape.
Police commissioner confuses Norris with Daniels and goes up to Norris in the middle of this interrogation that's happening in the hospital. And he shakes Norris's hand and calls him lieutenant and tells him this is the hardest job a police commissioner ever has to have. And that's when Norris has to say, this is the lieutenant. And gives a very less sincere statement to Daniels at that point. Obviously, you can't restate the exact sympathetic speech that you just gave, but they both kind of roll their eyes. And it gives you we really get an impression of how little the brass cares about the situation, the officers, how much they care to get it right.
Well, yeah, two takeaways from that, as one we'll see a little later, is that there's a little subtext of, you want to call them microaggressions or prejudice or whatever. This and another scene with the ops where they have to deal with someone else. But also we see how the priority isn't necessarily this officer has been hurt in the line of duty and we have to do everything we can to save her life. It's officer's been hit in the line of duty. One of ours has been shot. How do we fix the optics of that? We have to make it known that we don't allow this. So it's just very interesting. It's very synonymous to what happened with Omar and Avon and him getting attacked, and how we had to send a message that, like, you know, I guess before he got attacked, we had to send a message that we can't be stolen from. Mm-hmm. So it's very similar. The cops have to send their messages and just as much as the drug dealers do.
Yes, the reaction is more important than the outcome.
Yeah.
Now we get a lot of cool shots back and forth that have a lot to do with the actual investigation at the crime scene, mainly with Jay and Bunk, as they are now following this trail of where the shooter or shooters might have gone. And
you get a kick out of seeing Jay, Bunk, and McNulty like be homicide detectives? I do.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because it makes sense. It seems to make so much sense, but it doesn't seem as if many of the officers work this way.
Right.
And so you got, Jay is out there until he's quarter of his shirt is sweated through and still wearing his tie, but him and Bunk are literally on foot following footprints in the mud and seeing where that trail takes you. We have DEA at the scene asking Rawls about, it's one of those, I'm not being an asshole, but they said, I'm not concerned about the money, but if we could just get to the guy we think has the money. And Rawls tells him, this is where you're like very into Rawls. It's like, it's hard to hate him because they fuck your money.
He has three. That was number 2. He has 3 scenes where he impresses me. Number 1 was where he walked in and told everybody to stop moving. This was number 2, and we'll talk about 3.
And then he makes sure, like I said before, that he makes sure that everyone on the team is on the case, and he goes over to McNulty actually to make sure that McNulty is safe, and he's covered in blood, so Rawls doesn't even know what to think. And
now, this is the first time we've seen McNulty this whole episode, so the whole time I'm thinking, where's McNulty?
And remember, so like this all happened, he was the first one to pull Greggs out. Imagine once they took Greggs in the ambulance, then McNulty's just sitting by himself, just basically a mess. And Rawls' main concern is, let's get you the fuck out of here. You need to leave. You need to stand up. You need to walk away from the crime scene. We need to get you somewhere better than this. And Rawls, everyone's trying to get answers, and they're never really giving direct answers as to what Kima's condition is. And he kind of asks, like, is she dead? And it's almost like Rawls says that she is. He just asks, like, is she? And he just kind of shakes his head. And you're not really sure what that means. We find out it really just means that she's just in bad condition. But this is then on the way out, we get the rundown, I think, from Cole as far as what everyone's role is, where everyone is. And another DEA agent comes up to Rawls on the way out to, again, pledge support, whatever you need, manpower, money, whatever. And Rawls kind of gives them like a go fuck yourself. Like, yeah, thanks. At this point, any type of help is too late, I guess, for them.
Yeah.
So we now go to Freeman. who tells the detail that we need to get to work, and Carver's like, fuck you. And Freeman has to lay it out. Again, it's the training, not just the logistical training, but the emotional training to be able to keep yourself in a calm mindset, like what we saw with McNulty to administer mouth to mouth last episode on Greg's. But now here for Freeman to have the mindset to come to the scene. He wasn't there. He came to the scene to get the crew to tell them, we need to work these wires. You guys got to be up on the rooftops, and we need to see what people are listening to. And when he explains it to them like that, that Carver right away, like me and you on the roof deck, Herc, and they're all about it. So they're getting ready to go. And Freeman, another moment of clarity, has anybody got in touch with Kima's? He says Kima's peoples. And, the family, we have a girlfriend. And so Carver volunteers to go find Cheryl and then go meet back at the rooftop.
Yeah, it's just very similar to what Rawls did, but in a different way because it's a smaller, more specialized group. He was able to rally them and keep them focused on the mission.
And this really is a group that needs to be told why a lot more than, an entire police force that's maybe trying to work a murder. You listen to your authority, your authoritative officer, your whatever. This guy says, don't move and get off the scene. You get off the scene. Freeman tells these guys, let's get to work. And they have to be coaxed into it.
Yeah. And it's all because they can't deal with, like you said, the emotions of what just happened. But now they're able to channel it into being productive and hopefully catching someone on the wire. So.
Mm-hmm. Weebay and Little Man now we know are the two shooters because they're on the run at this point, and they're calling a pager from a payphone. And Little Man is drinking a soda, and they're even saying, I wonder who that was, not expecting a woman in the car. We find out that threw the entire plan off for them. Bunk and Jay are still on this trail and tracking these footprints the entire way there. They find clothes. And the care that they're trying to put on this, they tell one of the officers, you're camping here. No one touches this stuff now. Like, you stay here until someone comes, and it takes them off of the grass onto the cement where they find more footprints. And a little funny back and forth between Bunk and Jay, kind of in the way you might expect between Bunk and McNulty, where he says either they got tired here and Bunk says, or they got into a car. And Jay's like, right, they got into a car, they drove away, right? Mm-hmm. And Bunk calls in to get some of the road taken up, so that they can get these prints.
They're making plasters out of the footprints in the grass and in the mud, and then they're taking a piece of the pavement out. So, Bunk's doing some real detective work here.
Mm-hmm.
And the soda, not to skate past that, because I thought it was significant how he just threw it down on the floor. I knew that was going to come back into play. So.
Yeah, good judging just how easy Freeman gets to that.
Yeah.
Boy, it just looks stupid in the middle of a manhunt to just literally throw a trail of your clothes and your drink.
Evidence, yeah.
Where'd the soda come from? Where, like, where did they stash the soda?
Next to the gun, I don't know.
We get back at the hospital now, and the brass are listening to the recording. And this is like it's sickening almost. And to the point where McNulty does get sick and they're screaming, turn it off. Forrester screaming, turn it off. And they can't get the recorder off. And McNulty goes and pukes in the trash can. And that's when Rawls, again, I'm assuming this is your number 3 Rawls moment.
Number 3 right here. Yep.
Rawls basically comes over to him and gives it to him the way a hard-nosed authority figure, I guess, should. Basically tells him, this is not your fault. This isn't on you, and almost has to appeal to his ego, to McNulty's ego, and saying, not everything is about you. This isn't about you. You didn't do this to her. You didn't get her shot. I'm not going to sit here and let you think that you did a damn thing to get a police shot. I think it's also like terminology, a police, the way he talks about it. That's how he refers to her, a police. I thought that's interesting terminology. And tells him, he says, and you know that this isn't on you because the son of a bitch telling you this hates your guts. And if this was on you, I'd be the guy to tell you so.
And if it was, he'd be the first one to praise him.
Yeah. And so I thought, like, it makes you like Rawls. It's like it's like the tough love father figure where now you're seeing, oh, he does care. He's an asshole, and we already know he's been trying to sabotage McNulty's career. But in this case, he realizes how real. This goes beyond a personal beef. This is for the whole department. We need unison.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So yay for Rawls.
Rawls, you know, like maybe we'll put Rawls on the board this week as he won because he
okay.
So
okay. And at the end, the way he tries to close this out with McNulty is he tells him shit went bad and she took two for the company. That's the only lesson here. That, in my mind, almost unredeems Rawls because, again, none of this was all their idea. For me to say that that's the only lesson here is washing away the mistakes that led Greggs to be shot and this sting operation to be played out in the first place. But I feel like he's taking the coddling of McNulty and meshing it in with let's not tell on the police that we fucked this whole thing up.
I guess I wasn't aware of how involved Rawls was in that decision because it seemed like more of a narcotics decision than a homicide thing.
Well, I think it was Burrell. It was the commit. It was the ops who nailed it.
So I don't necessarily. I get what you're saying. I don't necessarily see that as a takeaway from from Rawls because at the end of the day, he is right. Like, if an officer gets hit in the line of duty, they took one for the company. That's the takeaway. It's like, yeah, we could pick apart what we could have done differently to prevent it, but that's what the job is. That's how I took it, at least.
Yeah. And I just felt like internally between the two of them, I would want him to say almost like, we'll do it your way from now on, or you were right, or, you know, just something that...
I'm giving him that, though. He still hates the guy.
I think I'm too much like McNulty. So this starts a shitstorm in Baltimore. Police are kicking in doors. They're looking for Savino. It's the only name that they have right now. And the word is out that he shot a cop. And we know because Freeman and Prez are listening on the wire where they're all saying, hey, they're looking for Savino. They're kicking in doors. They're saying he shot a cop. They're saying like it just happened. And someone else is like, no, that didn't happen. Like, no, I think it just happened. People are acting like it happened. And they're also trying to figure out, Freeman and Prez are trying to figure out, okay, if we're not getting confirmation on the wire, what else can we do to figure out more about this case? And so they're looking at the pages that happened during the night, which we know was Weebay hitting up Stringer's pager because they know Stringer's pager already. They don't know it was Weebay. And so they decide to cross-reference the identifier, which was put on Stringer's page as an 07. We already know that 07 is Weebay because Prop Joe gave it to Omar a couple episodes ago. Joe did a great job with this and also with Maryland University Medical or whatever, the hospital, with setting up these little details so that you can feel confident as a viewer helping to crack the case with them. So
Maryland University Hospital thing. Maybe I'm forgetting that.
So that's actually how Perez is going to cross-reference Weebay's number in that.
Oh, because of the slug he took in the leg.
Yeah, Maryland General Hospital.
Got it.
The hospital, right? And they set up earlier, a few episodes ago, that Weebay tells them, I went to Maryland General and told them I just caught one on the corner.
Yeah.
And so that is all they have really now is just this 07, but that's the information that Perez is going to be able to cross-reference to confirm that it is Weebay as an 07.
Yeah, and Perez is pretty confident in that being Weebay.
Mm-hmm. So Weebay and Stringer now meet up at the print shop, and this is the moment that you just go, oh, this is the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the scene. I love the way it's shot. And you're absolutely right, the way that you recognize the print shop. This shop stands out as a scene, as a location, stands out from the rest of the show. The way they shoot around it, I don't know if it's because they had more room or more control over the lighting indoors like this and all the windows that they have with the natural lighting, but the meme itself, or the GIF itself, the way it's shot, they don't shoot many things like that. The way they come in front of Weebay like that and pan around, and
a lot of movement, it's very well done, which is crazy. When you think about it, it's just a GIF at the end of the day, and just one reaction shot from one scene at the end of the day. But I guess the way it was well done technically, allowed it to stand the test of time.
And shout out to Weebay just for the reaction shot. I mean, his reaction during the entire scene, basically coming into the print shop and Stringer filling him in because he doesn't know at this point that that woman in the back seat was a cop. And Wee-Bey is shocked. He thought it was one of Orlando's girlfriends or whatever. And he's even arguing a little bit with Stringer, like, that wasn't no cop. That looked like one of Orlando's hoes. And they're like, and he's trying to, like, Bay, where are the fucking guns? And Wee-Bey can't get over this. You can almost see the realization in Wee-Bey's face that his life is over because he shot a cop.
Yeah, but luckily he remembers he tossed those guns, and then they quickly realize that they got to get out of town. And he admonishes him for, shooting this person, right? And Wee-Bey doesn't lie. He pretty much says little man went crazy.
Right. It was little man that freaked out, saw the girl, and they always say, you see a girl, you're supposed to switch it up. And he's mad. He's weak, and so he tells Wee-Bey, like, little man's got to go. Again,
is Omar said that? Or is I'm not Omar, excuse me. Avon said that?
Stringer said that. Okay, because I know Avon has a conversation later about little man also. So that conversation is confirming again that little man's weak, but Avon or Stringer telling Avon, I already put Wee-Bey on that.
Got it.
So this is him putting him on that basically, because the idea is that they could be cool and they trust Savino. Savino's good, but right now this cop's in a coma, and Stringer tells Wee-Bey, if this cop wakes up and tells them how many right now, it seems like they know that the cops only know Savino was involved. There aren't two shooters, even though they figure it out from the bullet casings, but they don't know how this is going to end. So he says, we got to see how they play this with Savino. If they go past that, Stringer says, so he almost needs to play counter moves here.
Yeah, he has to see how they punch first before they react.
So the first move is for Wee-Bey to take care of little man and then make plans to start laying low, and tells him, I want you to go where you don't have a connection. He's got connections in New York and Cleveland and a couple other places. And so he said, okay, so in Philly, DC, somewhere, but still Northeast. So Carver now does a terrible job of telling Cheryl about Kima, runs into her in the hallway, which again, it's awkward. You're trying to build yourself up to drop this horrible news when you knock on the door and you turn the corner and she's just right there. And Cheryl doesn't know who she is, and he almost kind of has to stumble. I work with Kima, and she almost has to put it together herself. And Freeman at the same time now is tracking the payphone that they were able to track the code coming from where Wee-Bey called Stringer. And this is where he finds the soda can. Mm-hmm. And so we've got Bunk and Jay doing their own recognizance, and then we've got Freeman on his own telling him we need prints on this here. Let's get prints on the phone, and that's really only information because of the wire. The only reason that they know to check it is because it's in the phone logs. It must not have been on the trail that Bunk and Jay were following.
Right.
And Carver now is sitting with Cheryl, Kima's girlfriend, in the hospital, and he's got to step up and like tell Daniels, like, hey, I've got Kima's girl here. Does someone want to say something? No one even knows, like, she doesn't know her condition or anything. And Burrell says, oh, she's got it's like just total facepalm moment.
And this was a scene I was referencing earlier, kind of the second microaggression of the day, but it was a little more than that because they refused to even speak to Kima's girlfriend.
It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And just in the time that this takes place, the early 2000s, the world was not as accepting on a high level, especially for gay marriage, gay relationships. And so you see here that this is frowned upon almost strictly because of the sexuality. It could be because of the race, but I took it as
because of sexuality. I don't think even race is even an issue.
Yeah, I took it as but when the commissioner has the whole thing with Daniels in the first place, where he,
that's true. Yeah,
so it just looks like a complete failure of leadership at the top in that way to make Cheryl feel cared for. And Burrell
some of the questions they asked is like, oh, her girl, she has a daughter? Or it was.
Yeah, Burrell, so embarrassing. And so when he informs the commissioner, like, hey, and I think even Daniels, the way Daniels says it, and I assume Kima's out in the show. She's not. She's. Everyone knows that she's gay, but even Daniels refers to Cheryl as her roommate.
Well, I'm giving Daniels the benefit of the doubt in that situation, that he's explaining it in a way that's quote unquote palatable for Burrell. Not that he, I think he knows that's her girlfriend and he's very close with Greg's, but he knows Burrell doesn't have any idea who Greg's is. So he's kind of explaining that to her, I guess.
Yeah. So Burrell has to basically take on the role of spokesperson for the department and go speak to Cheryl. And she just looks like
so much subtext with that scene because they go, it starts with Carver going to Daniels, and you talk about chain of command, right? This is chain of command in this entirety.
Right.
Carver goes to Daniels. Somebody say something to Kima's girl. Daniels goes to Burrell. Burrell goes to the deputy ops, right? They're like, they look over, they're like, no, we're not talking to her. He comes back, I guess I'll do it myself. So, it's just funny how we see all the chain of command and the racial politics of it play out, where he's a low man on a totem pole. He's got to go do it.
And really then at the end, how they look at it from the very bottom with Carver witnessing all this and saying, oh, no problem. He could always pose for a photo op if we lose her.
Yep.
Reflection on your subordinates is terrible.
Yep.
McNulty is now cleaning up in the detail. I assume he has not slept. He's still got Kima's blood all over him. And he's just basically washing up in the sink and drinking.
Per usual.
And Prez just kind of catches him there. Cops now are concluding that these guys are pros just by the fact that they must have set up a car on the other side of the tracks and done the murder and then shed their stuff and run back to the other side and took off. There was also a theory at times that maybe these guys were amateurs. Again, they're trying to start a base value and not go about it the wrong way and just say these are Barksdale's people. But once Freeman comes in and gives them Little Man's fingerprints on the soda can, they're able to absolutely conclude that these are Barksdale pros. The phone has them calling up their boss, telling them that the deed is done minutes after it's completed. And Norris's mind is blown, and he says, this is a great moment. He says, great pull, you are? And Freeman introduces himself. Oh, I'm Lester Freeman. Where were you? Pawn shop unit. Bunk and
not even where were you? Where are you?
Where are you? Yeah. And Bunk, and because again, this is a detail in theory that without this detail, he's back in the pawn shop unit.
Yeah, as soon as this case wraps, that's where he's going.
It's funny. There's no scenes of Freeman's pawn shop unit major telling him that he wants him back because they're
and this goddamn detail. I need you here to tag these guns.
You're up on a card.
Yeah.
So that's a fun little scene. Pawn shop unit. We get D'Angelo and Bodie and Poot now. Been a little bit since we've gotten to see these three together, and they're talking basically down on the area of the projects that shot the police. They seem very out of the loop on the organization, on what's going on. This news all seems to be happening so fast that everyone seems a little bit behind the viewers as far as what they know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a very smart way to write it because, I mean, it's like a span of 4 hours. Like it just happened and it's all hitting the projects and it's all hitting all the various networks. So it makes sense for someone in D'Angelo and Bodie's position not to know exactly what's going on.
And D'Angelo even says, like, acting as if he's smarter than Weebay and or whoever might have pulled the trigger, and says there's no percentage in that. How are you going to kill a cop? And I don't know, just everything we've seen with D'Angelo, I just think it's gutsy of him to talk about how stupid it is to shoot somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
We get Poot now getting a phone call from Wallace, someone saying, hey, Poot needs you. And that's when Poot tells everybody where Wallace actually is, that he's with his grandmother's down at the beach. And he calls him up twice a day, whether he's got something to say or not. So I guess he's paying a whole bunch of money on the payphone, waiting for Poot to run down there, and then has as much conversation as he can have for the money he put in.
You tell Wallace is just homesick. And, you know, he's, as much as he wanted to get away from the drug life, it's almost like reverse institutionalization, right? He's just so accustomed to his life and how it was. He can't really, he's safe now on a farm or whatever you want to call it, in a house, not in the projects, not in the low rises, and not in the bando. And he misses it. He wants to go back.
We get Detective Vernon Holly going through Kima's clothes, and that's when Kima's pager goes off, and the clothes are all bloody, of course. And this is one of the scenes that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, if I'm being completely
Really? Because it makes so much sense to me. I love the scene, but I want to hear what you mean.
Well, the scene, we go back and forth between this and Poot. But we'll go back to Poot in a minute. We'll just kind of go through this whole scene with Bubs.
Yeah.
So the pager goes off, and Holly has the detectives go to the payphone that is put in to the pager. The cops come and grab Bubs, who had just paged Kima. We know why, because they're supposed to meet so he can get clean, like get money so he can get a place. But Holly says that basically he was putting 911 on her pagers. She's not an actual drug dealer.
Yeah.
Kima. Yeah. Kima doesn't have the pager of a drug dealer. So someone paging Kima wouldn't be a person in on shooting her. It would be someone paging Kima Greggs, the detective.
Sure. I think it's more so that the day this cop gets shot, you're getting a 911 page incessantly from this person who appears to be a shady character. Like, something's not adding up. I think that was the motivation I took from that.
If Kima was undercover and had relationships with grimy people, then I would think that. But my first thought is, why would a criminal have Kima's pager? And the coincidence just doesn't add up.
Yeah, but I think it just goes to show how aggressive they get when a cop's been shot, that even the slightest thread, they're going to pull on it as hard as they can.
Yeah, it feels very, and this is a phrase that someone brought up to me recently, tunnel vision. It feels very tunnel vision in this way, that he's just focusing on Kima being shot and is just trying to figure out anything he can to get any information.
Sure, because if I'm a cop without the context and the knowledge that I know as a viewer, I'm like, okay, this guy might be a CI. He's paging her 911. Why is he paging 911? Was he part of the setup? Was he trying to warn her? Does he have information? Like, you know what I mean? So he's probably going down all that thinking, we got to get this guy in and find out what he knows. So.
Probably also that Bubbles is maybe the most sympathetic character on the show.
Well, yeah, that's for much of a viewer, we feel bad that he's getting, kind of suspected of being involved.
Yeah. So Holly just basically whoops his ass, and he asks, Bunk is able to stop it, and Jay is in there, and Bubbles asks for Greg, and they say
McNulty, actually,
and then says, and this is always great, the way they McNulty, and he never gets McNulty right, so it's McNulty in this case.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the clue for Bunk that this guy is not a threat.
Yeah.
We also get back to Poot, who's talking to Wallace, and does not, like you said, does not seem to be having a good time, and the phone just kind of hangs up, and yeah, he just walks
out of money. Yeah,
walks down this lonely road, and Poot seems happy to be talking to him. But I gotta wonder, like, did they give Wallace any rules when you're stashed out here? Like, you're out here for your own safety. Don't tell anyone where you are.
No, I doubt it. Sincerely doubt it. I think they just, how do we get this kid somewhere so we can just not worry about him until we need him for trial? And they just threw him in I don't think they gave him any rules or anything.
But Poot now knows where he is and told everyone where he is, and so it feels like, what's the point of him being gone anyway?
Yeah.
So Herc and Santangelo now are looking for Savino on the rooftop. Basically, this whole idea of one of the best ways to find out who might have been involved is to find out who's not there. So they're trying to find Savino. Of course, he's not showing his face publicly, and that's when Herc catches Bodhi using the payphone. He thinks it's to call somebody, but after a couple seconds, Bodhi hangs up the phone and someone drops a package out of the tower window. Herc, being that he's been on the rooftop and Santangelo has been barely paying any attention this entire season, Herc's the only guy that knows what's going on, and he's fucking happy about it. He says, right, he goes, Santangelo goes, what's that? And Herc's all, oh, you don't know? This is like the first time Herc's known anything over anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, look, man, he's a sergeant now, going to be a detective now, right? Detective or sergeant? Sorry.
Sergeant.
Yeah.
Sergeant.
Okay.
So he gets the photos of it, and we can then cut to McNulty, and he's just drinking in front of Daniels in the detail. Daniels tells him to put it away, work the case, a little back and forth about how bad they feel and how much of this case would you give up to have her back. And they're speaking as if she's dead. And Daniel says, I'd give it all back to have Greg's back. And McNulty just saying none of this was worth it. And that's when Bunk calls McNulty to tell him about Bubbles. And Daniels takes the bottle and tells him one more time to do your job. A little more Michael Jordan.
Yeah. But yeah, McNulty, he's so self-centered that he's taking this time to focus on himself instead of what everyone else is doing and going back to work to try to catch these guys. And
he really does seem to have some just self-guilt in this case that it's his fault that this all happened.
Sure.
Avon and Stringer now, it's our first time getting to see them since knowing what all the characters know. And this is now, we're finding out a little bit more about this, that they should have switched it up when they saw the girl in the car. I guess to them, a girl in the car automatically might be a signal for cop.
Or just in general, you're not going to, if you're out to murder somebody and you see an innocent woman in the car, switch it up.
Yeah. And on top of that, Stringer acknowledges that it was his idea, not idea, but Weebay and Little Man came to him and said, if we can get the money too, it's a payday. And Stringer okayed that. And so now they're sitting here with this money. They're saying cop money. It's probably marked. They got to burn it. And that's a big contention for Avon that Stringer gave this okay. Because like you said, how were they knew that Orlando was arrested. How's he going to front this type of cash? And Avon says, we were his bank.
Yeah, so it was the first time we've really seen Stringer make a real tactical mistake. And I didn't necessarily attribute it to him until he admitted it and came forward about it. But it's an interesting character moment for him to admit that defeat, get admonished by Avon, and just take it on the chin. And it also shows a little bit of cracks in his armor because he did make a mistake trying to get rid of the loose end, which was Orlando. So it's a loose end they needed to get rid of because he's snitching, but
right.
It was a mistake how he handled it.
Yeah. So he basically confirms what we talked about earlier, that he put Weebay on Little Man. Little Man is the weak one of this, and that if Savino sticks to his story, he's going to be fine. And as we find out, that's pretty much true.
Yeah.
So we get McNulty now telling Bubbles about Kima Greggs being shot, and he's a mess, and tells Bubbles, like, if you want to do something, just keep your eyes open and stay on the street, find out, like I said earlier, find out who's around, who's not, who's missing, anything you can hear. And he hands Bubbles $20. And Bubbles tries to tell him at that point, he says, things are a little bit different for me, haven't been around. And sadly, McNulty it doesn't even enter his mind. And in complete opposite, that when Bubbles seemed off, Kima looked in his eyes and said, how long you been clean? In this case, McNulty just assumes, are you beefing with someone? And Bubbles almost sounds dejected, like, I'm not beefing with anybody. He's trying to tell him, like, I'm trying to get better. And McNulty doesn't even want to hear and just says, eyes and ears open, hands him a $20 bill, and wants to get him back on the street.
Yeah, and that was what I was kind of referencing last episode. You have one character in Kima who saw this criminal informant that they're about to lose and still, despite that, was selfless and wanted to help them improve their lives. Whereas McNulty, all he can think about is this case, this detail, and catching Avon, and he's willing to, allow Bubs to continue down his life of drugs just for it.
And it'd be so easy to villainize McNulty in that case, in this situation, and be like, oh man, this guy doesn't care. He's not even listening. But you got to remember he's involved in this pressure of catching Kima's, at this point, they're, I guess just shooters is how they're referring to them. They're not her murderers. So he's just obsessed with this, which is at this point the priority of the whole show. It's the Ace storyline. So you almost can't blame him for wanting to send her CI back out there to get any more information. But again, Bubbles is just such manipulated character is the right word, but you just feel for him so much. You almost want him removed from this responsibility.
Yeah, and I think they did a great job of making you feel that by writing the scene so close to the one with Kima, so you just really see the distinction.
Yeah. On the other side of this now, Burrell just wants to make a public statement. And he's telling Daniels that by bust, basically that this whole thing was his fault. It's almost like a grandiose, it looks like a broad. I wonder if Burrell's like the actor is a Broadway actor, just because it felt like such a stage performance. I put our men and women out there. I'm the one that okayed this decision. We have to show them who we are. We've got to put some damn dope on the table
Dope on the table. And essentially, and he puts it on. He says the commissioner wants to send them a message and show people who we are. And he tells Daniels, this is your team that's got to put this together. Pull everything you have. And it's almost like they haven't learned anything. He wants quick action on stuff, when the idea of this is that that's not what gets them anything. And now, in his defense, do we see, I mean, because his priority has never been catching Avon, and it still isn't. Now his priority shifting is to changing the optics after this police shooting and showing that police in Baltimore still are in authority. So, from that perspective, dope on the table is what he wants to achieve that goal.
Well, I feel the commissioner's goal is to put dope on the table and show them who they are. I feel Burrell's initiative is to look like he knows how to lead a tactical mission, a strong tactical mission, and remove this blemish of essentially him making the call that got Kima killed.
Very, very smart. I didn't think about it that way. Yeah.
It does seem like he's almost yelling at Daniels about two different arguments in the same argument.
Yeah.
And that's when Forrester feels the same way. Major Forrester feels the same way, that we got to show them who we are. And Daniel says, who the hell are we? Levy, there was a point, I think we missed it. This sometimes happens, I guess. But McNulty and Rhonda confront Levy at his office. And this is him basically telling, this is immediately after McNulty tells Bubbles about Kima. And they go to Levy and say, hey, listen, we need Savino, your client, here in handcuffs. He shot a cop. We need you to step up and bring your client in. We know he did it. We got the whole thing wired. We know he's a part of the Barksdale crew. And Levy's just like, I don't know where he is. And Rhonda's playing softball. And we've talked about this a lot, this relationship that seems to exist between the judges and the lawyers and the police and the judges. And this, again, is Rhonda afraid to push. And McNulty almost putting out very plainly, like, you're not going to aid and abet the safety of a cop killer.
Yeah, I mean, from the other end of the scene, I took it as McNulty, once again, like he did last week with the parental hearing, he took Rhonda by surprise, right? He walked in there with the super aggressive stance and talked about, I don't remember the exact action he was going to take against Levy, but it was something, to affect his livelihood. And then he asked Rhonda plainly, like, is the state's, I know he's saying this, is the state's attorney also saying this? And she is forced to back him. And it's another situation where he chooses to not inform her what he's planning on doing. Mm-hmm. So
what he was essentially threatening Levy with was finding out, let's look at all of the money that you say you have, and let's look at your deposits, and let's see if let's see if everything matches up. And on top of that, we're going to be in your shit. And almost alluding a little bit to what they've started to find out as far as Avon's money has a lot of reach.
Yeah.
And as they're starting to learn about these businesses, right? Stringer's got a print copy shop, but they've also got retail storefronts, and they're looking into campaign investments. This money goes places, and the little bit that he knows is just a little bit of leverage to put on Levy, which works because he's going to do it, despite the fact that it's frowned upon. You can't blackmail an attorney. And Rhonda tells him, like, and I got to be honest, I'm not satisfied with her explanation. Her explanation isn't that this is illegal to blackmail Maurice Levy. It's that he's going to fuck my professional career. And if I don't want to stay in an assistant state's attorney my whole life, I can't piss him off because he sits on the board that makes these decisions as far as jobs that you have.
And it's a common theme for a lot of characters, man. It's like, look, I'm only going to do this to the point where it's not going to affect my career. So,
and that's just really disappointing to see her so passionately defend that under the guise of Jimmy McNulty is selfish. Because she says you'll just use anybody. And yes, when you look at, the fact that they had a relationship, the fact that he dragged her to that child support hearing, like all she's tried to do essentially is help. But in this case, that has not a lot to do with him other than his ego. He wants to bring in this guy that had Kima shot. And Rhonda just isn't willing to go that far to do that.
Why should she? She doesn't know Kima. She doesn't have any ties to Kima the way McNulty does. So in her mind, it's just another cop that got shot on the line of duty in Baltimore. So why would I jeopardize my whole career and break this protocol, this known protocol between my profession and my colleague who's maybe on the other side of the battlefield, but he's my colleague, right? And she's just like, you brought me in here and didn't even give me a heads up. So I don't know. I feel what you're saying, but it was interesting to me that she went along with McNulty after the second time that he's done this to her. Mm-hmm. And it could have put her career on the line, like she said. So I thought it was just interesting how she still chose to back him.
Well, to me, her choosing to back him almost justifies that he was right. Imagine how crazy
morally he was right. Yeah.
Imagine how crazy I guess I'm more offended that she's offended that she was put in the position rather than recognizing the offensiveness of not wanting to help enough. Because
I don't think lawyers are part of the fraternity, man. That's what it is. Like the cops are the fraternity and the officers, but the lawyers are just they're their own fraternity.
Yeah, it does seem like there's the idea of you can't force, if he's saying he doesn't know where he is, you have to just take that and find another way to get him.
Yeah.
And to me, that seems unacceptable. And to McNulty, that's 100% unacceptable.
Yeah.
And so he puts them both in this situation of essentially blackmail.
Mm-hmm.
So that's followed by that. That's when Prez finds the pager code, confirms with Freeman about that code, and it was used when Stringer's phone was dialed the same day that Omar killed Stinkum and shot Weebay in the leg. And they don't do it, but Prez says, I'll bet if you go and look at Maryland General, you'll see that Weebay was checked into Maryland General on that day that the code was used from Maryland General. We know this because in the scene in Omar, or the scene in Avon's office when they're all talking, that is what Weebay confirms, that at Maryland General, he went to Maryland General by himself and told them he caught a stray in the corner. Yeah. So great callback, a little thing that I probably didn't catch until the 15th time watching this. Mm-hmm. This is now where we're getting caught up now.
Yeah, so now Levy's with all the lawyers and
Savino.
McNulty and Savino, yep.
And it's very coy, and they basically lay out, they don't deny any fault of Savino's of which can be proven. And the story they've told that they're telling the cops now is that Savino's plan was to defraud Orlando of $30,000 by selling him baking soda and making the cops look stupid in this case, so that they basically laid out this whole plot that they want to be able to connect everyone to. And the only thing that that Levy and Savino are willing to cop to is that essentially that he was in the car to sell fake drugs.
Yeah, and he has all the perfect circumstantial evidence to prove this case. Like, he left the money behind, so no transaction was made.
Which he says on the tape, don't touch this count. He says it there, so they can't say, oh, he's just saying that. He literally says, I'm leaving the money right here.
Yeah, so he is really McNulty thought his aggression was actually giving himself, closer to the case, and it's actually kind of giving Savino an alibi. So,
and they're trying to talk very plainly in that a police was shot, that should mean something. And Levy gives him says, if you have something else on my client, go for it. Otherwise, the best that you can do is, and he gives them the code, and it's basically for selling sham controlled substance, which carries 3 years and a $5,000 $5,000 penalty, to which Bunk says, oh shit, you still have 25 grand, right? Yeah, so they're up 25 grand, and but like we know, they're gonna burn that money. They're not keeping it.
Yeah.
But they say that all the lawyers can do is say that Savino's gonna serve every day of the 3 years. And much like with Marvin Browning, he says, I can do the 3, ain't no thing.
And look, man, they understand that not only is it pay to be loyal to Avon, but it also hurts to snitch. So
you gotta wonder, like, if these guys take care of the family or things like that.
Sure they do.
Go to jail.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Bubs is hanging around now the towers, and for a while there, Poot is there, and he goes to the payphone, and he's really eyeing up Bubbles, and it's a little awkward at first, and I didn't know why he was like staring at him so much, but then it just kind of gets brushed off, and I guess it's nothing because he's just waiting for the drop for
because I took it as
he hasn't been around.
He hasn't been around. He hasn't bought, and he doesn't look strung out. So he's there looking suspicious because he's not strung out. He looks more together than he's ever been, and we haven't seen him in a while. So I feel like Poot registered that, like, what's this dude doing here?
Yeah. And again, Carver is up on the rooftop, and he's watching this happen, so he's able to see. And what we learn is that they're changing locations, and so I'm assuming that this is a different window that gets dropped out of, and Herc is keeping up with this.
Yeah, because it's not the same spot where we're used to surveilling them.
Yeah, and D'Angelo and Bodie are in the pit, still talking about the people who have died. And this is like another scene where you kind of learn how little connection different parts of Avon's world have with each other, and that Bodie doesn't even know about who Orlando was or about the club. He knows nothing about that.
Yeah, this is a multi-million-dollar corporation, right? And Bodie is just a foot soldier in that department over there and the towers.
Like, who is Orlando? All this over him? Like, what the fuck is that? And Orlando's almost, I think, gassing up the fears that D'Angelo starts. Yeah, that D'Angelo starts to exhibit in the next scene, because he's saying, you know how your uncle is when people start fucking up. People are nervous.
Oh, Bodie. You're saying Bodie is kind of building up that. Gotcha.
Yeah, building up the scenario. Like you asked, why does D'Angelo get so scared? And it's like, well, this conversation that he has, and as they're talking about this, that kid runs up again and says, they're saying you need to get with Stringer. Tells D'Angelo this, and Bodie says, see, you're moving up in the world as long as you don't get mixed in with the trash that gets thrown out.
Right.
And that's almost.
I was wondering what did. So because we never really addressed the scene. So D'Angelo goes to meet Stringer, right? Mm-hmm. Who in turn sends him off with Wee-Bey. And then you could tell just he's very nervous about this.
Yeah, that comes up in a minute. But yeah, he and imagine, so all he hears is that, people are getting killed. Lil Man hasn't posted for work. People are scared in the towers, and everyone knows the reputation of the Barksdale crew. So now, not knowing exactly where he stands or exactly what needs to be cleaned up, Stringer is being weird as fuck. It's not all in D'Angelo's head, right? Like, Stringer gives him zero information, barely gives him any eye contact. When D'Angelo asks Stringer a direct question, where are we going? What's going on? Stringer just like eats alive this Advil and then says, what the fuck are you waiting for? Nobody's talking to him. It's weird.
Yeah. They definitely don't make him feel at ease before he's about to go. But my only question was, what did D'Angelo do that made him think he would be in danger right now?
Well, remember what Bodie said, as long as you don't get mixed in with the trash that's getting thrown out. I think he's just worried that in general, they need to just kill anybody that knows anything. If they're kicking in doors, people are getting killed left and right. I mean, they're killing the guy that did that murder. What if they try and come back on another murder? I mean, that's what Bodie essentially is talking about, that they're cleaning up. They could be cleaning up around here, and people are messing up, and maybe even thinking that. And again, Bodie doesn't know Avon like D'Angelo knows Avon, and D'Angelo might not even know Avon the way we, the viewers, know Avon, but. Bodie almost putting out there that anyone could catch it from the crew if they want to clean things up.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that kind of, we keep bumping around to all that where now Weebay is taking Bodhi somewhere, or taking D'Angelo somewhere. And this is when it's finally revealed. It's like pitch dark, and it's the whole, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a trope when someone thinks they're going to get killed. It's like in mob movies, when they take the guy in, there's plastic all over the walls. That's what you're like expecting here. And they're going to Weebay's house.
Mm-hmm.
And he turns, and this is when D'Angelo thinks he's going to get it, and Weebay flips the lights on, and it's just fish tanks everywhere.
Yeah, he's got a lot of fish.
Got a lot of fish. And all that's happening here is that Weebay needs to go on the run to Philly, and he needs to teach D'Angelo how to take care of his fish, and that's it.
Yeah. So it's a real good, I gotta say, they wouldn't put a scene like this in here unless it was foreshadowing or referencing something coming up. So I'm excited to see what it's referencing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was a good job of making D'Angelo seem scared for his life.
Very much. I mean, damn near crying, sweating. But it turned out to be the most innocent. And I appreciated that they gave Weebay a little bit of character outside of the streets, that this guy's a fish lover and he takes care of fish in his free time.
That was interesting. Yeah, for him, of all people. Again,
if this was Walking Dead, he would have gotten eaten by zombies by the end of the episode.
Oh yeah, that would have been it.
Oh, Weebay likes fish. So now everyone's gonna,
I'm trying to do the meme.
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to do.
Everyone is kicking indoors tomorrow, except for the main stash. The detail is basically responsible for handing out all the intel that they have, and Daniels makes it known to the crew that he's not going to give the main stash that they tracked off the Mondo Mart detail, that they're going to keep that back. And the biggest hit that they have is the tower stash that Herc's been catching. And so Herc gets to play professor up here. He gets to hand out the pictures. And it's pretty interesting that they throw in this detail that the warrant is going to be amended in real time if the re-up apartment has changed. Because Herc says they change the location every couple of days. If that happens, they have an actual judge on the phone that will orally amend the warrant, which I thought was a pretty interesting detail.
Yeah, it was very cool to hear how they're preparing in real time for the stash house to change if it needs to.
I also thought it was nice that this police work meant something for the case. That while we're seeing Herc finally start to get it, and that he's certainly above Santangelo now, it meant something to the overall detail. It wasn't just look at him being happy over crumbs. Right. This is the big part of the case, to be able to get this dope on the table.
And it's interesting how they're positioning him now as more valuable to the detail as Carver. Yeah,
got the stripes. Yeah. Sergeant Herc. He's got the stripes.
Did he officially get his stripes or not yet?
He hasn't yet. No.
Okay.
So during this whole time is when we're going back and forth with D'Angelo and him meeting up with Stringer and Weebay. And we're also getting back into the detail as they're trying to prepare, because essentially everyone has to write affidavits and warrants all night long before they kick in all the doors. And during this time, the bald black guy that you had asked about earlier, I looked him up. It's Major Bobby Reed.
Okay.
That is who that is. And he shows up at the detail screaming at Daniels. I think he says, "Stop bullshitting me."
That's who that was. Okay. I thought that was Burrell. Okay.
Yeah. And I think when you mentioned him, when you asked about him earlier, I thought maybe he was the commissioner, but he's another major, much like Forrester, the old white guy, and Presbeluski's stepdad, Stan Valchek. Those are all majors, just like Major Rawls.
And Daniels has suction with Valchek, at least he thinks he does.
Right. So then Daniels tells the team, well, basically tells McNulty and Daniels, or tells McNulty and Freeman, that he knows, that Reed knows, and Burrell by proxy knows that they're holding off on the main stash. And that's when they look out into the detail and realize that somebody, the only time that's been talked about was just a few scenes prior, when Daniel specifically said, we're holding off on the main stash when we hit all these houses. We're just going, our main thing is Herc's information and all the other stuff. But they truly believe that holding off on the main stash is going to allow them to keep investigating and finding out stuff, like when they were able to pull all the trash out. They need to keep that alive in the investigation. Burrell does not care about that. He wants the numbers. He wants the dope on the table. But worse, they now know that someone in the detail is talking to Burrell.
Right. So they realize that they have a inside snitch. Do we want to do some speculation, or do you know too much for me to speculate with you right now?
Well, I'll respond to your speculation.
I was just gonna go through everybody who's in there. I mean, Prez is a strong candidate, honestly, because he has a high relationship with that one deputy op, right?
Well, that's his father. That's his father.
Yeah, father-in-law. So, I could see Prez. He's always there. He knows everything that goes in and out because he doesn't have any. He's stuck to office duty for the most part.
I could also see him unknowingly telling his father-in-law.
But that thing with the stash house is so specific. Whoever did it intentionally, I think.
Okay.
The fact that they were holding that stash.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not even going to guess no more, but I think Prez. That's my guess. But I'm
Prez. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
We get to go back again to McNulty confronting Phelan, who, when we saw him before, he was very agitated. And now McNulty comes and grabs him out of like this fundraiser for the party where he finds out that Phelan is back on the ticket and now basically has zero interest in helping McNulty.
And now let's dig deep into that a little bit, because there was a poster made, because presumably he's still on the ticket. He still has to fight for his reelection, but he had no visibility. They took him off the poster, which means no one's going to know him to vote for him. And now they put him back. What did he have to do that? Seems like he's easing up on pushing this Barksdale case. I'm just implying that. I'm just seeing those dots together, but that may not be the case. Maybe more to that.
Well, and Phelan gives McNulty an explanation for what he says is going on. And he says it's politics, but nothing to do with his case. What he says happened, Phelan says happened, is that they were keeping him off of the ticket for a black face, that someone black was taking its place, and that the answer was to give not just a spot for Phelan, but a spot for the black face. And so now there's a black person on the ticket and an extra spot for Phelan. And they were just they were jousting to put that all together. And then says it had nothing to do with your case.
Right. The fact that he said that make me think it had a lot to do with the case. But maybe what he's saying is face value. They are friends.
But McNulty then gives Phelan the chance. He says, I need you to rip him a new one. I need you on this, or else they're going to make us take the stash house. And he says, I can't do it. And McNulty asks him a famous line from, I think it was 2 episodes ago, when Phelan called Burrell to get the extension after Burrell tried to shut it down. And McNulty asked him, who's my daddy now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A total letdown from Phelan at this point, as the guy who helped instigate this.
But you see, as you get to these politicians and judges and lawyers, that all they can really hang their hat on is their relationships. It's not so much the work. Like, you got a good police like Bunk or McNulty, and they can survive the political game because they're great at their job. But with attorneys and judges, it's all politics, it seems like. Very
much so. This is where we get the actual scene of Wee-Bey with D'Angelo and the fish. But when he's still even asking, after he realizes that he's just taking Wee-Bey somewhere to hide out, he asks him, like, where are we going? And Wee-Bey says, Philly. Welcome, Wee-Bey. And D'Angelo says, Philly-o? And Wee-Bey has to say, D, we shot a narco. We shot a cop. D'Angelo doesn't seem to understand how bad this situation, even though he said in that conversation with Bodie at the pit, if someone shot a cop around here, the cops would be over here making heads roll. He doesn't seem to get that they're all needing to move at a lightning fast speed and get the fuck out of Dodge, because the cops are coming with all their force.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, D'Angelo, again, he just doesn't see the gravity of the situation.
Yeah. Cheryl is just hanging out, listening to jazz. Your least favorite thing, crying about Kima. So again, more jazz.
Yeah, and we see that she's taking it hard, obviously.
And reminiscing over the highlighter spat that they had.
Right. Oh, yeah, we're on the couch, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Last time when they were listening to jazz before and you hated it. I feel bad for Cheryl because she just has no role in the show at this point without Kima.
No.
And that very much feels like the role her character has as well, that she just has no purpose without Kima. No one from the department is checking on her. She doesn't seem to have anyone. Like, there's none of those friends from the previous episode are with her. She just seems completely by herself, which is sad.
Yeah, sure.
Bubbles is back at the detail, and he's telling McNulty basically the same thing that they already knew, and McNulty's relaying it back to Bunk, that Weebay, Little Man, Savino are all missing from the neighborhood. But he also says Wallace is missing, the young boy from the Barksdale crew, which of course they know because they took Wallace out of there. So no new information from Bubs in that case. But Bubs tries to tell McNulty one more time that he's clean, but McNulty's not listening to it and just says, hey, we're going to get your ride because they're going out for the raids.
And you see that Bubs still has that 20 McNulty gave him, which implies he hasn't bought any drugs. He's still trying to stay clean.
But he's almost white-knuckling the bill. McNulty actually going out on this raid, too. So we're 2 for 2 on McNulty operations here.
Right.
Anything for Kima. So the raid starts, and it's just basically madness. They're hitting everything at the exact same time. So everyone's kicking in every door. Everyone's there. Freeman, McNulty, Daniels, Bunk, Carver, Herc, no Bunk. They're all kicking in the doors. And we get another little scene here with Carver and Herc back together. They lift up the mattress, and they see a stack of bills. And before they get in any trouble again, they decide right then and there, let's just take two of these stacks here and put them in our vest, and then we'll turn the money in, assuming, I guess, this way. Remember, Carver's the one that knew that the money would be talked about on the wire. Assuming at this point no one's going to talk about it on the wire, they're pretty safe to steal this money.
Yeah, they made a calculated decision after their last mistake. Like, this is a smart way to steal versus the accident we could have made last time. So it also felt like, I could be reading too much into this, but you talk about goodbyes last week. This felt like a little goodbye for them because isn't Herc moving on to Sergeant maybe? I don't know.
Right. This show will tell you, the show does a great job of, by the end of every season, letting you know where characters are headed.
Got it.
So we'll get to see, where Carver would, or where Herc would end up in this situation.
Okay.
So we also now, because of all the work that they did, we get the photo op that the brass is famous for, and they're all in front of the dope on the table, the money, the drugs, and the commissioner whispers to Burrell, "That's fine police work," and they basically take all credit as this is a direct response to the people in charge, but the people in charge are not in cuffs in reality.
Right.
The press conference is playing on in the background, and much with every press conference that the brass, the police chiefs and commissioners all do, and the majors, no one in the detail is very interested. They did all the work, and they're not interested in even watching these guys take the reward.
Right. Because they know it's a losing strategy. So.
And now that everyone in the Barksdale crew is pretty scattered, the wire is pretty dead at this point. So Perez is just kind of sitting around, except for one last important detail that happens in that Wallace is on the phone with Poot, and he's asking for bus money. And Perez hears it and unfortunately does not seem up on this information and marks it as non-pertinent. And we then just, our first shot of Kima in the hospital fighting for her life. And that's how the show ends. The episode ends.
Now, what do you think of the non-pertinent Wallace thing? You seem to be thinking that it is pertinent because he's a CI and he's coming back from quote unquote, I mean, it's not real, like, witness protection, but quote unquote witness protection. So that is kind of pertinent to the case because
they also need to keep tabs. And as we know, you can't keep tabs on anyone in West Baltimore. He lives in a vacant. There's no phone. The only way they have a connection is through a pager or through a payphone. It's the only way to get in touch with someone. Cops had to sit there all day just to find Wallace in the first place.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think the last thing that they want is him getting coming back and not being able to be reached. Omar even is given direct instruction last episode to keep in touch with McNulty's pager so that they know where he is when they need him to testify. Will they know how to get Wallace when he needs to testify?
Doesn't seem like it.
But none of that at all. And again, it's these shades of gray. Prez has had some pretty good episodes, some killer points where he's really some redemption since he's had his horrible incident in episode 2 with hitting that kid and being very sheepish about it after the fact. He's really starting to learn, and even Lester as the top detective telling Prez, you've got a nose for the paper trail. This, he just completely, it's like seven steps forward or up, and then like 3 giant steps back for something this important.
What, with Wallace?
Yeah, for Wallace to not tell anybody.
I don't know if he knows. I don't know if he's been privy to that information though. Does he know that Wallace is a CI?
Well, Daniels took him there. Daniels was in. They were in the detail together when he was asking him how much drugs have you been using. Daniels dropped him off himself at the grandma's.
Okay, fair enough. That was at the detail. That wasn't at homicide where they originally had him. So fair enough.
And it just seems like Prez was there when McNulty's drinking behind his back. It just feels like Prez is always there. Polk was there drunk, and Prez is just over there photocopying the phone. Right. It just seems like Prez is always present. And he seems to just have zero connection to understanding at all who Wallace is or anything.
Yeah, definitely.
And I would think just at this point, everyone should be very tight on the importance of every witness and location and the case itself. But this has totally skipped his mind.
Sure. I'll give him a little bit of a pass due to the chaos with Greg's getting shot.
Yeah. So that is the end of episode 11, The Hunt. We've gone really, I guess, from you assuming that Kima was dead at the end of episode 10 to then I remember you saying right before The Hunt. Yes, this is like a morning seeing essentially it was the dope on the table thumbnail that they were showing, but you assumed it was almost like a mourning and we will avenge her death type of speech, and it turned out to be way more selfish than that.
Yeah, just about the optics of the police force. Sure. Yeah. So it's interesting to see. I mean, we got 2 episodes left, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's just interesting to see what story threads get wrapped up. I mean, we're kind of past the point of who's winning a little bit because it's wrapping up and we're hitting the finale. And Omar is left, so Omar's not even a factor. So now it's really between Barksdale crew and the cops. And yeah, I don't think. I mean, right? This is a race, and the finish line's right there. If I'm giving them 2 episodes to catch Avon, I don't think they're even close. So
this is true. There's almost 2 different sides of this, right? There is like the investigative work and what the brass are trying to do and just make a public statement, which I think would almost happen with any major player's arrest. But then there's the overall long-term investigation that this is about Avon and Stringer. Avon more so, but Avon and Stringer that they just are not close to at all. Sure, they've got Wee-Bey on the run now. They've got Servino who's now going to be doing time. And Little Man is dead. So the people who...
Is that confirmed, by the way?
Yeah, he's gone.
Okay.
Because he didn't post for work, they said, at the towers. He didn't show up at the 221 building. So at that point, he's gone. Wee-Bey was supposed to take care of that before he left.
Okay.
So really, half of Avon's crew is on the run, but Avon and Stringer don't feel like they're in any danger of going to jail.
No. Avon is definitely aggravated at the mistake that Stringer made so far, but that's big. The biggest takeaway from this situation is that, Stringer's got to tighten up.
And, really putting it in the analogy or the metaphor of the chess game, it's a bunch of pawns.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when you look at it, look at all the pawns that are still there. D'Angelo, Bodie, Poot, Wallace. A lot of pawns are still in play on the chessboard to protect Stringer and Avon, the king and the queen, who are essentially a little bit on the run, right? The police are encroaching, but they've still got all these other pawns that can be put in their place.
Exactly.
So it's getting tense. We have 2 more episodes. I'm really excited to finish this up for the season, and I guess that'll be the next one. Will be cleaning up, episode 12, season 1, cleaning up.
All right, so we'll see you next time for First Watch Rewatch.
First Watch Rewatch. Leave a comment, subscribe. I don't know.